On today's video, I'm going to share with you old-fashioned homesteading skills that we're learning as we pursue self-sufficient living. The first very important skill is having chickens. I always think they're the gateway into homesteading, and they are so important to our farmstead. We eat anywhere from around a dozen eggs a day between Mr. Roofer and I, and we only eat meat from our own chickens that we butcher here at the farm. We do not eat any outside chicken meat, so the eggs, the meat, and the bone broth are so important for our health and our food security. Dairy cows are definitely the queen of the farmstead. They hold a very high esteem on our farm because they can go harvest solar energy, which is grass, and bring back food for us. We make kefir. There's a lot of products that are complete. I feel like nutrition and would keep us alive if anything happens. So we put a lot of emphasis on our dairy cows and dairy products. A few weeks ago, I talked about a cheese that was very specific to my region called Koch, and I'm going to show you how I make that. First, you want to make some clabber. I am just making a half gallon, so I clabbered a half gallon of milk, and then I put it in a pot and warmed it just barely until the curds separated. When the curd separated, then I strained it through cheesecloth and I hung it in the cheesecloth, and for maybe 2 days, this has something to do with your ambient temperature, and I would just go several times a day and I would squeeze the cheese to let more moisture drip out. So when the curds were really dry, then I took them and I put them on a platter, just spread them out real thin. And what we're looking for is for them to turn kind of a yellowish, kind of with a little shine on top. And that can take, maybe 3 days. So then next, when I felt like they were ready to cook, I sprinkled a little baking soda over them about 30 minutes before I was ready to cook them, and a little bit of salt. I think I used about half a teaspoon of each, and just stirred it in and just let them sit for around 30 minutes. So when I was ready to cook the curds, I heated up some butter and some cream, and then I put the curds in and melted them, and I had to stir constantly. But what we ended up with was so flavorful. It was like cultured. It was delicious. And the Germans around here would spread that on homemade bread, and they would eat it with dried sausage. And I think that was their supper a lot in my area in the late 1800s. If you've been watching my channel very long, you know that I am striving to learn homesteading skills for the last 20 years. How I determined what skills I wanted to learn was I had bought a German farmstead that had an 1883 German rock home on it. So I picked that year to go back in history in my county and look for the culture and how people lived their life. For us, beef cattle are very important. Beef cattle do very, very well in the Texas Hill Country. They actually, as long as it rains, our grass is really nutritious, and so that is a very important food source for us. We eat beef every day. So Mr. Roofer and I work really, really hard at grass-fed genetics and raising low-input beef cattle so that we always have a good food source and food security. Along with having beef, one of the most important things to me with having beef processed is I love the beef tallow. Beef tallow, I have a video on this, so go back and watch, but we render the beef tallow and it is so delicious. It is something that we eat every day. Of course, also a very important part of rendering fat is you need it for soap making. Now, Mr. Roofer grew up with raising hogs, and so they rendered lard. So I have a few pictures of when his mother, which she actually did lots of rendering lard and washing clothes in black pots. Soap making also was an important activity to the pioneers, but of course they didn't have the electric mixers and stick blenders that I have. They did it by hand in the black pot. But it was very important because they made lye soap, because they did all their laundry, and that was, of course, very important. So the soap I'm showing you is actually a lard soap. Lard soap makes a great stain remover. I cut the bars where it is convenient for me to rub the stains on my laundry. Another important skill that I am working on is quilting. Ladies, in my area, I know they did hand quilting because in the old houses they have hooks on the ceiling where they would quilt in well-lighted rooms. So I've really been working on this skill. I'm actually making a quilt for my grandson. I wanted you to see, Mr. Roofer built this quilt frame. I wanted you to see how you roll it up. This is definitely a old-fashioned design that has been used for a very long time. So it's just real simple. So you can definitely build one. It's very, very easy. Another important skill is bread making. Now, I do bread making with sourdough, and I am going to show you how I make. This is called my children's favorite sandwich bread. It's a cup and a half of water, a tablespoon of honey or sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1 cup of sourdough starter, and I mix all that together, and I add 4 cups of flour. You can go to my blog at Texas Farmstead Living to get a printable copy and for more detailed instructions. So I set it aside for 30 minutes, and then I wet my hands and I start doing stretch and folds. Now I'll do, I know that in the summer, and it's September right now, it's really hot. So I know that anywhere from 3.5 to 4.5 hours from the time I mix the dough to the time that it's ready to shape and put in a basket, that's about 3.5 to 4.5 hours. So somewhere in there, I'll try to do anywhere from 3 to 6 stretch and folds. So the way I know that my dough is ready to put in the basket is I will do a float test on the dough. It looks like this dough's ready to go. And on this bread, I only do 1 shaping. On a lot of the tartine style, high hydrated doughs, I will do 2 shapings, but on this dough, I just do 1. I kind of want this bread to be kind of flat and kind of, kind of spread out because I'm going to make a sandwich. So make sure and watch my video next week because I'm going to show you how I make the meat, which is a summer sausage for this sandwich. And I'm going to show you how I put this sandwich together. Now, it's pretty famous around here because it's the #1 requested meal by all of my children. Another important skill is sewing. There is always something to patch or to mend around the household. So I try really, really hard. It takes a lot of practice to be good at sewing, but I work on it constantly. And now I'm making most of my clothes. Another skill, actually this morning I went to a ladies group, is the embroidery. Now this is the German red work that I'm working on right here. But I think it's, the ladies here in the Hill Country, they always did embroidery. So it's something that I want to learn. Maybe not necessary for life, but definitely something that I want to acquire. Now you'll see a little bowl of yarn. I am making a pair of socks right now. Now that is important. I was taught by a German lady that does the German style of knitting, and she taught me to measure someone's foot and make socks. Super important, because you would always want to have socks no matter what happens. So sewing, something I do just, I'd say at least I time block for once a week. In the winter, I do sew a lot more. It definitely is seasonal. Part of having a homestead is growing a garden. So you must learn how to start seeds. It's really important, I think, and you need to practice. So don't, put it on the back burner, say someday I'll learn. Okay, gardening is something that we garden year-round here. We found passed down seeds from people. This is a pumpkin. It was planted July 1st. It's an egg pumpkin. I have some videos about how to process those. They are a very important food source for us. They grow well here, so we grow them. The Bible talks about the importance of seasons in Ecclesiastes 3:1. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. This is a magenta lamb's quarter, which can grow without any water. It thrived this year. It's what we use in place of lettuce all summer. I want to read to you an excerpt from a little book called The Flavor of the Hill Country, and it's Texas German recipes from the Sauer Beckman Living History Farm in Fredericksburg, Texas. The cycle of seasons influenced the lives of hill country farmers as concretely as it directed the growth of their crops. Their fates were intertwined. The tilt of the earth's axis told the farmers when to plow, when to plant, and when to harvest. It directed the slaughter of animals and how the meat was preserved, and it determined what the farmers would eat each day. I think there is a lot of wisdom from this, and this is what Mr. Roofer and I strive for. So I am making blackberry jam right here, and I'm making peach jam. Now I do pressure canning. I have an All-American pressure canner, and I do can meat. So this fall, when it cools off, I am going to do a video about how to, if the grid goes down, how to preserve your freezer beef. A long time ago, people grew plants and herbs for health. This is turmeric and ginger. Everyone lives in a home, or probably, or in an RV, but some general contracting skills are important. How to build something, plumbing skills, electrical. Of course, that's not off grid, but it's really good to have some skills. If you don't have water, you really have nothing. So we have a rainwater collection system on our big rock barn. You can see that it catches, it goes underground, and it goes into a concrete tiered tower. And I did just show you A few weeks ago, our new tower that we have on our water well, we keep adding those because water security is the most important thing. But you need some knowledge of rainwater collection, but we do also have windmills on our property, and we do have a video how to change the leathers on those. Thank you for watching. From our Texas Hill Country farmstead to you, have a blessed day, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.